My buddy Matt just stopped by last night and picked up his restored K-Part 325 chassis and dropped me off a little present. Oh, and as for the 325, with the arcing issue in the neck, the more this stuff played, the less it happened, to the point where it really wasn't happening at all anymore. I don't really have an explanation other than there was some little bit of contamination or sharp edge of metal or something that gradually cleared itself out. Anyways, this is what he dropped off. Now, I knew it was parts of an electric organ. He told me that over the phone, but I wasn't sure what organ exactly. Luckily, a little quick searching on the internet very quickly revealed that it was a Baldwin Model 45, I do believe, and I even found a great website explaining the theory of operation. It seems like this was a fairly notable design. It was a very early all-electric organ. This model dated from around 1953, I believe. And yeah, it's got a whole lot of tubes, and considerably more on the other parts, which I don't have, unfortunately. That would be the amp, and it had a couple nice speakers, I think, but there's also, I think, what they call the bass unit, which was loaded with 12AX7s. And this one is loaded with 6 SN7s, 36 to be exact. These are all the oscillators. I'll show the theory of operation on the website in a bit. And as you can imagine, this used a fair bit of current. I believe several hundred watts just for all the tube heaters. So there are 12 of these units, each with 3 6SN7s, which are dual triodes. So 6 triodes in each one of these. And what's in these? Well, I couldn't resist taking a peek before I started filming, so I already know. What we've got is a rather interesting device here, which is a bunch of linked transformers. And a bunch of caps on the other side, and then this device, which I think is an other oscillator or a coil of some type. And these are all numbered, so I imagine each one of these was for a specific frequency. Altogether, I think this covered 5 octaves. Could be wrong about that. I'll have to refer to that online website again. So, pretty cool, pretty cool. Now, I don't intend to get this working or anything like that. What I really wanted it for was the tubes, because just about every single TV I work on uses 2 or 3 of these 6SN7s. So I got 36 of them here. Hopefully some of them still have some life left and I can make use of them. Now, as far as these other parts go, I really don't know, because I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. So this seems to be, well, the pedals, swell, and grate. So we got the controls in here. Some nice panels here. Tone, deep, bright, vibrato. Some nice switches, some nice knobs. I'll try to save those. Nice bit of wood. And then this is sealed under some metal, so I want to pop these covers off. I think this is all aluminum, so I'll certainly be salvaging the aluminum. Plenty of cadmium plated steel too. Lots of nice green corrosion, so I'll be sure to wash my hands. Don't know what's inside these either. I'm guessing these have some really long springs in them, now that I think about it. That'd be for the vibrato or reverb, good old spring reverb units. So it'd be like pickups, microphones at either ends, and they would just kind of send the sound into one end, and it would delay going down that long coil and get picked up at the other end. There's one more piece that's still out in the backyard, assuming that the metal thieves didn't grab it. Yep, see it out there. So that's where I'm going to go next. Here's that website I was referring to, all about the development of the early Baldwin organ. And if we scroll down and go all through all the technical issues they had to overcome and talk about how the circuit works, and there it is. Baldwin oscillator and divider circuit. So there's the 3, 6, and 7s, and here are the linked transformers. And hey, look at that picture. Sure looks familiar, doesn't it? Baldwin divider unit. And there are the key contacts. And if we keep going, there is a photo of the whole thing. So I think I might actually have bits of a Baldwin Model 5, which would have been the very first. $2,650 in 1947. It was a pretty sizable chunk of change. And there is tone circuit. And it also looks very familiar. So, Model 5, yes, that must be from a Baldwin Model 5. Too bad it couldn't be saved. Too bad it couldn't be saved. There's also a Baldwin Model 10 and a Model 45. All look pretty darn similar, so the Model 45 has the same oscillator unit as does the 10. So it's a little hard to say, just going off these pictures, which I actually had. And here's the piece I didn't bring up inside. I don't think these are just switches. This would be over all the keys pressed, which I don't have. To find out for sure, I'll take this piece of metal off the back. More of that green cadmium corrosion. Just as I suspected, it's filled with all the switches. I had mounted one of them for a closer look, so here's the key would press. So there's some silver plated contacts inside. And then all the bus wiring down the back side. Just some nice cloth covered stuff, so I'm going to clip this out and salvage all this wiring harness. Reuse this in some of my other projects when I want to retain the vintagey look. In the end, I salvaged all the wire and every single key, with the thought that somebody restoring one of these organs might need some keys, and all the screws and washers and so on. And the metal will get recycled. Now let's take a look inside one of these guys. As soon as I turned them over, I realized I was dead wrong. These are more switches. So this thing must have had 3 tiers of keyboards. So I got a whole lot more switches in here. And here are all the plugs that go into this guy. So I think next what I'll actually do is pop this one open. When I flipped this guy over, I discovered a couple things. This is not cadmium oxide, this is aluminum. It's anodized or coated with something to give it this greenish tinge. Although some other components in this definitely are cadmium plated. And I noticed these 2 guys sticking out of the side. And this can, and these might be tubes, like Lochtel tubes. But they look a little weird because there's almost nothing in them. Now 7F8, yeah. Yeah, these are, I think it's a high frequency triode, or pentode. That's why the elements are just so tiny way down on the bottom there. I've got some TVs that use these, like in the oscillator mixer. Another one, cool. Definitely hang on to those guys. Mounted on a little rubber mounted sub-chassis. Well, yeah, a whole lot more switches. I figured that with all those external switches. Some transformers. whole lot of grungy looking caps. Looks like there's been some repairs done here in the past. Salvage these controls. These transformers. Okay. So, probably extensive filter networks for all those various modes of operation. And these might form some sort of amp, preamp, or maybe even some kind of effect. I noticed a lot of these caps are sealed type brand, which just happens to be what my Dumont Clifton uses. And I've been wondering how to rebuild these, because in that Dumont Clifton I want to really retain the original look but also get an operational. This will give me a whole lot of them to experiment on, because these don't have hard cardboard outer tubes, I don't think. I think they're basically a wax cylinder with just a thin outer paper coating. So definitely save a bunch of these for experimentation. So it's probably going to just be a whole bunch of switches in there and wiring, and I'll salvage a bunch of that. A whole lot of nice cloth covered wire that's still in really nice shape. For future restoration projects, except save all the aluminum for recycling. Save a whole bunch of the sealed tight caps. And of course pull all the tubes and keep my fingers crossed that a lot of these 6SN7s are still good. And then pop open this. I'm kind of curious what this thing is. Kind of looks like it might be a switch, and I can see there's a 2 on there. I don't seem to want to turn, or maybe it's just really stuck, or maybe there's a lock. Oh, looks like there's a screw sticking out of the side there. Fuse holder. Looks like that top was good. Wonder if this was for selecting a tap on the primary for what your AC line voltage might be. Yeah. So obviously all these modules are going to be the same. And, pop these screws out, take a look what's under here. Be the power supply. Oh yeah, I should restate what I said earlier about the tube filaments drawing 200 watts. Well, certainly not with just these 36 tubes with about 0.6 amps on the filament. It's going to be closer to 20 something watts, not 200 and something watts. Just got all the screws out of what I presume is the power supply. Flip that over and take a look. Big old power transformer. There's 2 beefy leads. That's going to be the filament juice for all these tubes. I presume it's a filter choke, some capacitors, maybe another filter choke, a couple resistors, not much to it. And then this thing, which I still think is some sort of like a line voltage selector. Try to get that screw all the way out, take a closer look at it. Yeah, I gave up on trying to turn it, so I just took the whole thing out. Still think it's a rotary switch of some sort, it just seems to really be stuck. You see there's number 2 through a window there, it seems to me. That's going to rotate, and then you'd see another number coming through that window. And I cut this free so we can take another look at the filament leads. So they, yeah, definitely very beefy, and they clamped on to some bus wires, which appear to be some sort of plated, maybe silver plated copper. 14 gauge, maybe 12 gauge. 2 buses that just ran the entire length of this unit. So, hang on to that if I ever need something that can handle some really beefy low voltage, like 6.3 volts at 20 amps or something like that. Use this puppy. Well, even after I got it up here on the workbench, I still can't get that to turn, so I'm just going to give it up on it for the time being. Maybe one of you guys out there knows what the heck this thing is. And I also found this gizmo. I also don't know what this is. I'm thinking perhaps it's some sort of spark arrestor, or maybe it's a battery. I'm not quite sure. I guess I can pull out my voltmeter here, see if I can measure anything across it. Nope, no voltage on it. Of course, doesn't mean it wasn't a battery and it's just gone dead. I don't know. That bit of wire has me a bit puzzled because it doesn't connect to anything. Just ceramic insulator on either side and just loops around. Weird. Well, if anybody knows what that is, please fill me in. I pulled out all the tubes and I'm getting ready to test them. I couldn't help but notice almost every 6SN7 is a tongue sole with a very similar font. Some are a little bit taller than others though, but they are all 6SN7 GTs. And the rectifier is a 5AR4. So I don't know what these day codes or what these codes might indicate, if they are day codes. But what I'm curious about is, are these the original tubes, or were they just replaced en masse at some point? Rather than just testing each 6SN7, the service center just decided to replace them all at once with new tubes. Now, as far as that current and wattage, I've got to correct myself yet again. I don't know what's wrong with my brain today, but 36 of these 6SN7s, 0.6 amps for the filament, about 21.6 amps. So that's why they have that big, beefy bus wire feeding all these tubes. It's a lot of amperage. Now for the wattage, you got to multiply that by the 6.3 volts AC, and you get about 136 watts just for the filaments on those tubes. Then add in a few other tubes like the rectifier, and then of course the B plus draw on these, the whole circuit, I imagine draws in excess of 200 watts. That was quite a bit of work, but I finally got the whole thing taken apart. So what was I able to salvage? Well, a whole lot of aluminum. That'll get recycled. Nice big machine blocks. Bunch of brass discs. Some steel. A whole lot of wiring. I'll keep the best of it to reuse for vintage projects. It's pretty good shape. Old cloth covered type wiring. And don't know if I'll do anything with these, but these are the internal switch contacts from all the organ keys. So it's a type of springy metal that was silver plated. I'll make contact with this bus down here. More metal. Ton of hardware. Tons and tons and tons of screws and washers and nuts, transformers and chokes. Oh, and from that assembly that had all those modules, all the 6SN7s, this was the backplane bus wiring. I believe it's solid copper that is silver plated, so hang on to that. And yeah, I got all those modules. 33 out of the 36 SN7s tested good, so definitely use those in upcoming projects, as I will no doubt this wiring and a bunch of other little parts I saved. And I have all those capacitors I can experiment on. And I've already had some success getting this label off, but I'll talk more about that in a separate video. So I hope you enjoyed this look at a Baldwin all-electronic organ from either the late 40s or early 50s.